Yeah, I should be made a co-host so I could share the screen.
Yes, Monday.
Yeah, I should be made a co-host so I could. Okay. Okay, so let us begin the afternoon session. My voice is coming through, okay?
Yes, Monday.
Okay. And so good afternoon, everybody. And now we are coming into the last full period, or actually the last stretch of time for the last of the 4 protective meditations. And in a way, this is the climax of all 4 of them and the climax of our individual life. So this is called Marana Sati, which is mindfulness of death. In the suttas, it's called Marana Sanya, the perception of death. Or we could render it a little freely as the meditation on death. And so this meditation has a number of benefits. So probably the principal reason why it's included amongst the 4 protective meditations is because it is the antidote to something called heedlessness or negligence. The Pali word that's rendered heedlessness is pamada. And the opposite of that is appamada, which is heedfulness or diligence. And we fall into heedlessness when we lose sight of the fact that our lives are mortal, and we think that we can live, that we're going to live forever, and then we become complacent about our life, and we just either indulge in worldly sensual pleasures, or we pursue transient goals like becoming wealthy, achieving high position, becoming powerful, becoming famous, becoming popular, getting a lot of friends, or we just become lazy and sort of drift through life without pursuing any higher goal. And also when we fall into heedlessness or negligence, then we lose our sense of our moral compass. We lose the qualities of hiri and ottappa, the sense of moral conscience and fear of the consequences of our actions. And so we become inclined to indulge in unwholesome actions, to push aside the restraints of morality and just follow our own desires. And what's interesting in the suttas, particularly we see this in the Kosala Samyutta. These are the teachings that the Buddha gave to King Pasenadi, the king of the state of Kosala. The Buddha doesn't use mindfulness of death or recollection of death as a spur to renunciation and striving for liberation, but rather he reminds King Pasenadi of the inevitability of death in order to spur him on to behave in wholesome ways and to give up the unwholesome types of actions that he feels he has license to because he is the king of a powerful state. And so the first benefit of mindfulness of death is it reminds us of our mortality. And because we're mortal, we have to reap the consequences of our actions. If we escape them in this life, we have to reap them in future lives. And so when we consider that we're mortal, that life comes to an end, then we're motivated to, at least at minimum, to practice good and wholesome actions. to practice generosity, to observe precepts, to develop qualities like kindness, compassion, helpfulness to others. So these are the kinds of deeds that create punya karma, meritorious karma, that in future will lead us on at least to a human rebirth, otherwise to rebirth in the celestial realms, the heavenly realms. But then for those of sharper spiritual faculties, mindfulness of death serves as a spur to strive to break the entire cycle of repeated birth and death by winning the deathless state, nibbana. And so that's the highest benefit of the meditation on death. And in a way, it's a little bit ironic, but there's a sutta, or several suttas like this in the Anguttara Nikaya, where the Buddha says the meditation on death, when developed and cultivated, is of great fruit and great benefit. It culminates in the deathless. It has the deathless as its consummation. So when one constantly, repeatedly practices the mindfulness of death, the meditation on death, then it engenders a sense of disenchantment with this whole cycle of worldly existence, and it generates a kind of dispassion, the ending of this attachment to worldly existence, and motivates one to seek to break the bonds that tie us to the cycle of birth and death, and attain that state of final liberation where one doesn't come back to birth and then have to again and again undergo birth, growing up, growing old, and dying. Taking birth again, growing old, falling sick, and dying. Separating from one's loved ones again and again, or losing one's loved ones again and again. And so with meditation on death as the inspiration, the motivation, then one undertakes the practice, developing the Noble Eightfold Path that leads to the deathless. Okay, so how are we going to practice the mindfulness of death? And the suttas give various sort of here and there, give different methods, different themes for reflection. And the commentaries add, especially work like the Visuddhimagga, add still more themes for reflection. But I found in these works that they're not tied together in a systematic way. But many years ago, I think this was in the late 1970s when I was living in Kandy in Sri Lanka, in our library, we had a book that came from I think it was called the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives in Dharamsala, India. It was a work by a Tibetan Lama, Geshe Nawang Darge, I think, in which the basic themes for the meditation on death were organized into a meaningful sequential structure. And then I adopted that for my own practice. Though over the years I've changed some of the content, but the structure is basically very similar. And so now I call this the 10-point instructions in the meditation on death. So in this practice, we have 3 main themes. And then those 3 main themes, each of them is broken down into 3 secondary themes. And so in that way, we get 9 points. And then we have 1 last main point, which doesn't have divisions. And so those are the 10 points of the instruction on the mindfulness of death. So let's go over these points briefly, and then we're going to use them as themes for the meditation. So the 3 main points: first, that death is absolutely certain. The second main point, the arrival of death is utterly uncertain, unpredictable. The third main point, when death comes, we have to abandon everything. And then the fourth point that stands alone is the only thing, when we die, the only thing we bring along is our karma, our accumulations of good and bad deeds. Okay, now let's take the subdivisions. So the first is death is absolutely certain. So how do we know that death is absolutely certain? Or what are some of the subdivisions in this theme? So we consider first that everyone who has ever lived before us has died. So maybe for some of us who are younger, maybe our grandparents are alive. Some of us, even our parents aren't alive. But maybe if there are any youngsters here, maybe their grandparents are alive. But go back to your great-grandparents. That generation, probably all of them are gone. Then go back to the great-great-grandparents. All of them have gone. And go back generation beyond generation, beyond generation, beyond generation. Go back to the first human beings who appeared on planet Earth, someplace in the plains of Africa, I don't know how many hundreds and thousands of years ago. They're gone. Then consider all of the empires that arose during the age of the empires, the ancient Greek empires, the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire, the different Chinese dynasties, the Indian empires, the great emperors who ruled over those emperors, all of their courtiers, their soldiers, their wives, their children, the princes, all have gone. And so when we consider everyone who has lived before us has died, all the previous generations, we can know that we too will die. Those in the next generation or 2 generations down the line will be looking back and know that we are gone. So from this, we know that we ourselves must die. The second aspect is that death comes along with birth. So usually we think, okay, I'm born 1 year, and then maybe 75, 80, 85 years down the line, death will come. But actually, if we look at this with sort of the telescopic vision and see things from a more distant perspective, we see that as soon as we are born, death is already with us. It's sort of just hanging around, just behind our back, so that if we turn around quickly enough, we could see our death standing behind us with a drawn dagger waiting to strike. And so death comes along with the very moment of birth, and it's just waiting for the right conditions to come together. And then death will strike and remove our life. The third sub-theme is every moment we are moving closer to death. Okay, so we think, okay, I'm born in such and such a year, in my case, 1944, and then death will take place some year in the future, and the rest of the time I can just do whatever I want, enjoy myself. But actually, if we look at it again with wise attention, we could understand every year I'm getting closer and closer to that year. So I have, in my case, 1944 dash. We don't know what the final year will be, but every year I'm getting closer to that destination. But wait a moment, not every year, every month I'm getting closer and closer. No, not every month. Every day I'm getting closer and closer. No, not every day, every hour, every minute, every second, every heartbeat. I'm getting closer and closer to the end. So I think of this. This is a little scary image, but I'll tell it. Okay, maybe I'll tell another image, not so scary. It's like the sun when it rises in the east in the morning. We look up at the sun and we say, oh, what a beautiful day. The sun is there on the eastern horizon. And then if we look at the sun, we don't see it moving. But if, say, 9 o'clock, we look at the sun, it's moved some degrees higher in the sky. Then 11 o'clock, we look at it, the sun has moved even further to the top of the sky. 12 noon, the sun is directly overhead. Then as the afternoon comes, it's moving, till by this season, about 4:30, it's already on the horizon, the western horizon, sinking to sunset. By 5 o'clock, it's dark. And yet, it's not that the sun jumps from hour to hour until it reaches sunset, but every second the sun is moving closer and closer to the sunset. And so our life is the same way. From birth, as soon as we're born, we're moving ever closer to death. And every second is bringing us closer. Just like the sun, every split second it's moving from sunrise to sunset. And so when we consider that we're always moving closer to death, that should give a sense that death is absolutely certain. Then the second main theme, the arrival of death is absolutely uncertain. So first, the three aspects. Uncertain with regard to time. We don't know when we will die. If any of you are in your 20s, you can't say with certainty, I'm going to reach my 30s. If you're in your 30s, you can't say with certainty, I'm going to reach my 40s. If let's say it's almost December, I can't say I'm going to live until New Year's Day 2021. Just don't know. Could be. I go out someplace and I'm on an automobile accident, I'm gone. So we just have no certainty about the time of death. We have no certainty about the place of death. We can't say, now I'm at Zhuangyan Monastery, so I'm going to die here. I don't know, maybe I'll die in a hospital, on a hospital bed. Maybe I'll die in an automobile crash on the road. Maybe I'll die maybe I'm out shopping someplace and a crazy gunman comes and starts shooting and I'll die in the shopping mall. We don't know the place of death. And then third, death is absolutely uncertain with regard to the cause. We don't know what the cause of death. It could be natural causes, could be some illness, could be cancer, heart disease, stroke, organ failure. I could get infected with the COVID virus and then it becomes stronger and then I can't breathe and then I'm gone. Again, it can be automobile accident, plane crash, many, many causes of death, and we don't know what the cause of our own death will be. So from these three angles, the arrival of death is absolutely uncertain. And then the third main theme, when death comes, we have to abandon everything. So first of all, we have to abandon all of our wealth and possessions, whether you are just struggling to get by with minimal possessions, you have to leave them behind. If you're a millionaire or billionaire, you have to leave all of your bank accounts and stock holdings and mansions, jewelry, everything must be left behind. And not only material wealth, but also the different positions you hold, chairman of this, president of this, director of this, the titles you hold, honors that you hold. You have a Nobel Prize, you have to leave that behind. So everything, all the acquisitions must be left behind. Second, we have to leave behind, to abandon all our loved ones. Husband must separate from the wife, wife from the husband, one of the two, unless they both die together under the same circumstances. One of them will be alive and have to say farewell to the other. Parents will have to leave their children, generally, and hopefully the parents will go before the children. Sometimes the children will go before the parents. Friends will have to separate from friends, teacher from students, student from teachers. So we have to leave all of our dear and loved ones behind. And not only other people, but we also have to give up, to abandon this physical body that we take. This is mine, this is I, this is what I am, this body. But this body has to be left behind. And the body will, if it's buried, it will gradually and slowly disintegrate over time. If it's cremated within a matter of hours, this body will just be reduced to ashes and bones. And not only the physical body, but even the personal identity that's built up on the basis of this body, the name that we give to ourselves, the person that people recognize in the way people identify us, that has to be left behind. So we have to give up everything. But death, according to Buddhism, doesn't mean the complete end of the life process. Since the stream of consciousness, at death, it moves on. The body is discarded, but the stream of consciousness moves on. And what is preserved are the different dispositions or traits of character that we've developed and our karma, the accumulations of good and bad deeds. So that is the fourth theme. Okay, so these are the 10 points in the meditation on death. Maybe if there's any practical questions, again, I don't want to take any theoretical questions, but just any uncertainty about the method of practice. Okay, I don't see any questions, so let us go directly into the practice. So let's just stand and stretch for 1 minute. Okay, do a little stretching, bending and stretching. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Other direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's it, we stop. Yeah, we don't need the light. Okay, first I have to say this meditation can be a little bit scary, but don't be deterred because it's important to face reality. This is our destiny. And so we have to face it courageously. And if we do this practice in advance, if we ground the mind and train the mind through the mindfulness of death, then when death actually takes place, then we are prepared for it. Then when death arrives, we can leave mindfully and peacefully. If we don't practice the recollection of death, then when death takes place, particularly if it's a sudden, unexpected death, then we go into a panic. So let's train ourselves in the mindfulness of death. Okay, so take your congenial meditation position. Settle the mind in the body. You can do a few rounds of mindful in and out breathing. Settle the mind. And first we encourage ourselves by thinking that we are going to practice now Marana Sanya, the meditation on death, which the Buddha said, the Buddha praised so highly, saying that meditation on death, when developed and cultivated, is of great fruit and great benefit. It leads to the deathless. It culminates in the deathless. So we take the first major theme. Death is absolutely certain, utterly inevitable, absolutely unavoidable. Death is absolutely certain. My death is absolutely certain. I will die. I will die. I cannot escape death. That is the truth, the hard truth, the real truth. Okay, so what are the subordinate aspects of this truth that death is absolutely certain? We can know that death is absolutely certain because all who have lived before us in previous generations, at least beginning the second or third generation back, all of them have died. The billions and billions of people who have lived on planet Earth in past generations since the dawn of the human arrival on this planet, all of them have died. So reflect on this truth. Even those who are very powerful emperors and kings, presidents, dictators, all have died. Those who possessed vast wealth, property, jewels, all have died. Even the wise sages and holy saints, even the arahats, the Buddhas of the past, even they have died. So I too, inevitably, certainly must die. Okay, next sub-theme, death comes along with birth. Once I am born, it's absolutely certain that I will die. That death, my death, accompanies me all the time. It's just like an assassin standing behind me, waiting for the right conditions, and then it will strike. So death follows me like my shadow. So with birth, death comes along as well. So reflect on this theme. Okay, the next sub-theme, every moment we are moving closer and closer to death. Just as the sun, once it rises, is ever moving closer and closer to the sunset, at every second, at every split second. So with every year, or every month, every day, every hour, every minute, every second, every heartbeat, I myself am moving ever closer to death, to my death. And so we can affirm that death is absolutely certain, inevitable, inescapable, because all who have lived before in past generations have died. Because death comes along with the very moment of birth, and every moment we are moving ever closer to death. Okay, now we come to the second main theme, the arrival of death The arrival of my death is absolutely uncertain, unpredictable, unforeseeable. I have no advanced knowledge of the arrival of my death. I don't know when I will die. So the sub-themes of this: first, the arrival of death is completely uncertain with regard to the time. I can say if I'm in my 20s that I have 60 more years of life ahead of me. If I'm in my 70s, I can't say that I'll be alive next week, next month, next year. So we have no foreknowledge when our death will come calling for us. So reflect on this. We have absolutely no certainty with regard to the place of death. We don't know, will we die at home or in the hospital? Will I die in my own town or city? Or will I die when I'm traveling someplace outside? I don't know whether I will die in bed after a long illness, or die suddenly out on the road, or maybe in a shopping mall, or in some public place. Could be caught in some crossfire between police and militant groups. Or die on the road in an automobile accident. So we have no foreknowledge of where we will die. And then we have no certainty, no foreknowledge in regard to the cause of our death. I don't know from what cause I will die. It might be from a heart attack, maybe from a stroke, maybe from cancer, maybe I will get the coronavirus or some other infection. It could be from an automobile accident. I could be murdered. I could be caught in a burning building and die in the fire. So many causes of death, and we don't know from what cause I will die. And so turn this over in the mind, that death, the arrival of death, is absolutely uncertain with regard to time and our age, uncertain with regard to place, uncertain with regard to cause. Okay, the next major theme: when death comes, we must abandon everything. We must leave everything behind. There's nothing we can take with us when we die. Almost nothing. First, when death comes, we have to leave behind all our wealth and material possessions. And that includes positions, titles, status, all the kind of material assets of our life. All of that must be left behind. No matter how wealthy we might be, when death comes, we can't bargain with him and say, I'll slip you a few thousand, but skip over my house, don't come to me. but I have to leave behind all my wealth and possessions. And so now, as I reflect on this, let me release my grasping and clinging to those possessions or to those positions and titles, realizing they are just transitory. Second, when death comes for us, we have to leave behind all of our loved ones, all who are dear and beloved to ourselves. That's even more difficult than leaving behind the material possessions. So if I were a husband, when death comes, I have to leave behind my wife. If I'm a married woman and death comes, I have to leave behind my husband. As a parent, I would have to leave behind my children. Would have to leave behind all my friends. So when death comes, I have to go on that journey all alone. No one can accompany me. And I have to be parted and separated from all these loved ones. So painful on the heart, but this is inevitable and inescapable. And if my loved one should pass away before I do, then I have to say a final farewell to them. Then, when death comes, I must abandon, leave behind this physical body, the body on which I build up my identity, the body that I cling to as being mine. This body will lie there as a corpse. Perhaps it will be buried and gradually decay, devoured by worms and various insects. if it's cremated within a few hours, this precious body will turn into ashes and the remains of bones. That is the fate of this body. And so when death comes, we must abandon everything, wealth and possessions, positions and status. We must leave behind our loved ones, and we must give up this physical body, the basis of our identity. So reflect on this. Then the fourth major theme: when we die, the body perishes, but the stream of consciousness moves on to its next existence. And the only thing it takes along are the tendencies of character, the dispositions of character that we've developed, and our karma, the potency of our good and bad deeds. Karma that will produce its fruits, its effects in the future life. And so from this, we can see the need to develop good qualities of character to carry through to our next existence and to accumulate wholesome karma that will produce helpful and beneficial fruits in our next existence. Okay, now come back to your bodies. Take a few deep breaths, mindful breaths in and out. And then you can open your eyes and then massage the limbs to get the circulation flowing. And we will do a round of walking meditation. And now in this first round on the mindfulness of death, I've been doing a lot of talking, but when we go into the next rounds, I'm just going to mention the main headings and subheadings, and you fill them out with your own thinking about those topics, those themes. Okay, so let us stand. Okay, so we start the next session. Yeah, we don't need the light. Okay, take your congenial meditation seat. Okay, again, now settle the mind in the body. Do a few rounds of mindful in and out breathing. Okay, we are going to practice now mindfulness of death, the meditation on death, praised by the Buddha as of great fruit and benefit, leading to the deathless, to Nibbana, having the deathless as its consummation. And so we take the first major theme: death is absolutely certain. Not death in the abstract, but my death. My death is inescapable, inevitable. What I can know with certainty is that I will die. And I can know this because all who have ever lived in the past, in past generations, have died. Okay, after I enunciate each theme, then I'm going to pause, and in the silence, you turn that theme over in your mind and reflect on it and chew on it. So all who have ever lived in previous generations, going back throughout time, all have died. The second sub-theme: death comes along with birth. From the moment I am born, death is accompanying me and following me all the time, looking for the opportunity to strike, just waiting for the right conditions to strike. The third sub-theme, every moment we are moving closer to death. Every moment I am moving closer to death. Every moment, every split second is bringing me closer and closer to my inevitable end, to my inescapable death. So from these three sub-themes, we can confirm that death is absolutely certain, that I must die, that my death is inevitable and inescapable. Okay, the next major theme, the arrival of death, is absolutely uncertain, absolutely unpredictable. The arrival of death is uncertain in that it's uncertain with regard to time. I have no foreknowledge when I will die, what age I will be when I die, what day I will die. The arrival of death is absolutely uncertain with regard to place. I have no foreknowledge where I will be when death comes for me. I don't know where I will die. And the arrival of death is absolutely uncertain with regard to cause. I have no foreknowledge of what the cause will be for my death. I don't know in advance how I will die, why I will die. Thus, the arrival of death, of my death, is utterly uncertain in regard to time, in regard to place, in regard to cause. Then the third major theme, when death comes, we must abandon all. We must give up everything. I must give up everything. So we must abandon all our wealth and possessions, all positions, titles, status, honors, all kinds of worldly external acquisitions. All of those must be abandoned at death. I must abandon them at death. Okay, when death comes for me, then I must abandon and leave behind all my loved ones, all who are dear and beloved to me. All must be left behind, and I must go on alone. And then when death comes for me, I must abandon this physical body, the basis for my personal identity. And this body will either decay or be incinerated, turned to ashes and bones. So when death comes, we must abandon everything, material possessions, our loved ones, and our body itself. Then the last theme, when death comes, the body perishes, but consciousness, the stream of consciousness flows on to a new existence. And the only thing I bring along are my habitual dispositions of character and my accumulations of karma, the good and bad karma, wholesome and unwholesome karma. So whatever good and bad deeds I do in this life, I will inherit the results in a future life. Okay, now come back to your physical body. Take a few deep and mindful breaths. And then you can mindfully open the eyes and again, give yourself a little massage to stimulate the circulation. And now we can take a little break, a tea break, and we'll come back. Let's see, it's 3:23. We'll come back at 3:40 to begin the final sessions in the meditation on death. Okay, we are ready to start the next cycle. So everybody ready?
Yes, Bande.
Okay, and again, I have to apologize that I can't offer you things which are new and different and exciting. But the practice, it's a matter of going over the same themes again and again in order to ingrain them ever more deeply into the mind and to change our ways of thinking, perceiving, and evaluating our lives. So let's take the familiar congenial meditation position. Settle into the body, into the felt sense of the body. Steady the mind with a few rounds of mindful breathing. Is the screen shared, by the way?
Not yet, Bande.
No, I don't think so. Okay.
Now we can see it, Bante.
Okay, so now settle into the breath. And now we reflect that we're going to practice the mindfulness of death, praised by the Buddha as of great fruit and benefit, leading to the deathless, having the deathless as its consummation. And so we start off with our first major theme. Death is absolutely certain, absolutely inevitable, not death in the abstract, but my own death for each of us, our own death. That day will come, inevitably will come, when our life reaches its end and we are pronounced dead. So the first sub-theme here is that all who have lived before us have died. Everyone in past generations, no matter how powerful, how wealthy, how wise, how saintly and holy, all have died. And so from this I know that I too will die. And so turn this over in your mind. The second sub-theme, death comes along with birth. So from the moment that I am born, death is constantly following me like an assassin with drawn sword, following me like a shadow, waiting for conditions to come together and deprive me of my life. So death comes along with birth. And so the reason that I die, the ultimate reason, is because I have been born. Okay, the next sub-theme is at every moment we are moving ever closer to death. So not just by years, by months, by days or by hours, but every second, every split second, we're moving closer and closer to death, to our death, each of us moving towards our own death. Just as the sun, once it rises in the east, is moving ever closer to the sunset. Or just like cattle, when they're put onto the truck, taking them to the slaughterhouse, they're moving ever closer with every yard that the truck travels, moving closer to the slaughterhouse where they will be killed. So we are moving, each of us, constantly moving every moment closer to our death. And so death, we can determine that death is absolutely certain. Our own personal, individual death is utterly inescapable, since we know that everyone who has lived before us has died. We know that death is the inevitable consequence of being born. And we know that the flow of time at every moment is moving us ever closer to death, to our own death. Everyone in this room, everyone on this retreat, everyone in this country, everyone in the world, for all of us, death is absolutely certain. Please keep on pondering, I will die, I will die, I will die. Okay, the next major theme, the arrival of death, is absolutely uncertain. So that's the arrival, for each of us, the arrival of our own death is absolutely unforeseeable, unpredictable. So first, it's unpredictable in regard to time. We don't know how much more time we have left in our life. Whether it's 40 years, 50 years, 20 years, 10 years, 1 year, a month. Even we can't be absolutely sure that we'll be alive tomorrow. So the time of death, the arrival of death, is absolutely unforeseeable. The next sub-theme, the arrival of death is utterly uncertain with regard to place. We can't know in advance exactly where we will be when death comes for us. Whether at our home, in a hospital, in a hospice, in our own country, when visiting a foreign country, on a highway, in an automobile crash, when out shopping, we don't know where we will be when death comes. So ponder this. And then the arrival of death is absolutely uncertain in regard to the cause of death. We don't know in advance what the cause of our death will be. Again, whether a heart attack, cancer, stroke, failure of a vital organ, coronavirus, pneumonia, automobile accident, caught in a fire, a house fire, victim of a murder. We don't know how we will die. So ponder this uncertainty. So we can see that the arrival of death is absolutely uncertain in regard to time, in regard to the place where death takes place, and in regard to the cause of our death. The third major theme, when death comes, we must abandon all. We must, each of us, we must give up everything that is of value, that is precious to us in our life, everything we're attached to. So first, when death comes, we must abandon all of our wealth and material possessions, including positions, titles, status, honors, and so forth. All of that must be left behind. And then, more painful than leaving behind the material possessions, when death comes, we have to leave behind all our loved ones, all those who are so dear and beloved by us. We have to leave them all behind and go on alone. Husband, wife, children, friends, other relatives, all must be left when death comes for us. And then when death comes, we have to leave behind our physical bodies, the foundation for our personal identity. So this body that we hold to as being mine or I, this body will be discarded as lifeless. It might be buried to become food for worms and insects. Or it might be cremated, reduced to ashes and bones. And so where is the I based on this physical body? Gone. And so we can see that when death comes, we must give up everything We must leave behind, we must give up all wealth, possessions, titles, positions. We must leave behind all our loved ones, all who are dear. And we must abandon, leave behind, give up the physical bodies. So as we ponder this, let us reduce our attachment to our possessions, to loved ones, to the body. Okay, then the fourth theme, when we go, the only thing we can bring along, but when we go, we leave the body behind, but the stream of consciousness, the continuum of mind, flows on as a kind of stream into a new existence, a new embodiment. And what that stream of mind brings along are the dispositions of character, the tendencies, the habit formations of the present life, and the accumulations of karma, or good and bad karma, wholesome and wholesome karma. So that is what follows us to the new existence. So recognizing this, we should make the determination, the effort to develop good traits of character, wholesome dispositions, and to create wholesome, meritorious karma that will bring beneficial fruits in our next existence. So ponder this. Okay, now come back to your body. Come back to the breathing, the in and out breathing. Take a few mindful breaths. In breath, out breath. In breath, out breath. And then mindfully, you can open your eyes. And again, massage the body to stimulate the circulation. And then we will do about 10 minutes of walking meditation. So we'll come back about, let's see, 4:11 now. So we'll come back 4:20. When you hear the chime, tang, that's the time to return to your seat. So again, we do the walking meditation, right step, mindful of the step, mindful of the contact of the foot, left step, mindful of the step, mindful of the contact of the foot. Okay, so let us start. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Is my voice coming through?
Yes, Bhante, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so let us take the sitting posture again. And now we're going into the last session, last sitting of our retreat. In this session, I'm going to divide into 2 portions. So the first, we will be running through more quickly through the 10 points in the meditation on death. And then I will tell you the other, what we're going to do in the last portion when we come to it. Okay, so settle into the body. The felt sense of the body. A few rounds of mindful breathing. Okay, now we are going to practice the mindfulness of death, praised by the Buddha, and recommended by the commentaries as one of the 2 meditation subjects suitable for every practitioner: loving kindness and mindfulness of death. And so we begin with a reflection that death is absolutely certain, that for each one of us, our death, my death, is absolutely certain, inescapable, inevitable. And I can determine this when I recognize that all who have lived before me in past generations, all have died, no matter how powerful, wealthy, wise, or saintly they might have been. All have succumbed to death. Every human being, in fact, every living creature from past generations has died. Second, I know that I will die because I can know that death inevitably comes along with birth. It's the flip side of taking birth, like the heads and tails of a coin. And when I'm born, death is always present, like my shadow, or like an assassin with a drawn sword or a loaded rifle, waiting to strike when conditions are right. Okay, next, every moment we are moving ever closer to death. Every moment my own life is moving closer to its final end, to that moment of death. Moment by moment, I'm drawing ever closer. Each one of us is drawing ever closer to our own individual deaths. Thus, from this, I can know that death is absolutely certain, inevitable, inescapable. Second main theme, the arrival of death is absolutely uncertain, unpredictable. It's uncertain with regard to time. I have no foreknowledge in what year, what month, what day I will die. I don't know how much time I have left ahead of me. And that's so for each of us. We can't know in advance when death will arrive, when we will die. Again, we have no foreknowledge where we will die. We don't know where we will be when our time is up, when death comes calling for us. And the arrival of death is utterly uncertain in regard to cause. We have no foreknowledge of what the cause of our death will be, how we will die, from what we will die. So the arrival of death is absolutely uncertain in regard to time, in regard to place, in regard to cause. And then the third major theme, when death comes calling for us, when it comes to take us away, we have to give up everything and leave everything behind. We have to abandon all our wealth, material possessions, positions, and status. We have to give up and leave behind all our loved ones, our dearest relatives and friends. And when death comes, we have to abandon and give up the physical body, our body itself, and the identity based on that body. And so when death comes, we have to give up all of these things. And so it's beneficial now for us to reduce our attachment to them. And then when the body dies, the stream of consciousness flows on to a new existence. And all that continues on are our habitual mental formations or dispositions, tendencies of character, and our karma, our accumulations of good and bad deeds. So this takes us through the 10 points in the meditation of death. And now for the last few minutes, the last 5 minutes, what we're going to do is to imagine we are lying on our deathbed and death is taking place. So you turn over in the mind the thought, death has arrived, death has arrived, death has come for me. And don't be frightened or terrified, but just use that thought to let go of all your attachments and just be swept away peacefully by the current of death. Okay, do this on your own. We'll do this for about 3 minutes. If fear and sorrow start to arise in your mind, just note them mindfully, let them go, and return to the thought, death is taking place. Death is taking place. Let me let go. Let me let go. Okay, now to conclude the meditation on death, what I like to do in order to appease or to quiet down any kind of fear or worry that might arise is just do a few rounds of recollection of the Buddha, just bringing to mind an image of the Buddha and generating the thought, I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dhamma. I take refuge in the Dhamma. I take refuge in the Dhamma. I take refuge in the Aryan Sangha. I take refuge in the Aryan Sangha. I take refuge in the Aryan Sangha. May the blessings of the Triple Gem be with me when I pass from this life to the next life. Okay, you could come back to your body now. Do a few mindful in and out breaths. Then you can open your eyes and rub the palms together and then massage. Massage the body to stimulate the circulation. And then we will have a period for some questions, but let me take a 3-minute inevitable break and then I will come back. Okay, so let us see. Again, the questions should be practical questions related to the subject of meditation that we've practiced today. And use the hand symbol to raise the questions. Okay, so I see Ivan.
So, Bande, so far we have 9.
Let me use this. Okay, go.
Bande, so far we have 9 questions out of the email and also YouTube. Would you like to take them first, or we should wait until later?
Yeah, first I'll take the questions from the people who are on the Zoom call with the raised hands.
Yes, Bande.
Okay. Okay, so Julia Lee. Okay, I don't get a question there. Mariam in Laguna, California.
Yes, good afternoon, Bante. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
Thank you. I first wanted to express my gratitude for the past 3 days. And then I wanted to see if you can make a recommendation into how to incorporate these methods into the daily meditation.
Yeah,
I have
actually,
a practice of breath meditation daily.
okay,
So
that's a very good question. In fact, I was actually intending to speak about that. I should have spoken about that, but about that particular issue. Let me just get a little water. Yeah, there are several ways that one can incorporate these 4 protective meditations into one's regular practice. One way, suppose you have your regular practice is, I call it like a body-based practice, like mindfulness of breathing or observation of the sensations. What you can do is, as part of the daily practice, in fact, this is what I've done over a long time, start off your sitting session with one of the protective meditations. Often what I like to start off with would be recollection of the Buddha, because that gives some kind of inspiration and upliftment. And then you do that for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then you move into the regular body-based meditation. And then at the end, you could do a few minutes of metta meditation, loving kindness meditation. Say 5 minutes of loving kindness meditation. So that is one way to incorporate these practices. Another way, if you are doing, say, a couple of sittings per day, you could devote one of those sittings to one or another of the protective meditations. And there are many variations on how to do this. You might choose just one of the protective meditations you're particularly fond of and do that regularly. Or you can rotate them. So you might do one of the protective meditations for 1 week in one of the sessions, then the next week do another protective meditation, then the third week, a third subject, the fourth week, a fourth subject, and then you come back to the beginning. And still another way, occasionally you might put aside the body-based meditation, the mindfulness of breathing or whatever, and just devote, say, the whole week to developing one or another of the protective meditations. Yeah, so those are some of the ways one could adopt them and apply them in one's daily practice.
Thank you, Bante.
Okay, Julia, were you able to unmute? Julia Lee? Okay, now you're unmuted. Do you want to ask your question? Okay, then I'll go to Sud.
Hello, Bante. Thank you for taking my question. An excellent retreat, by the way. So when it comes to these meditations, like the mindfulness of the body, Can we make this like the sole basis of our practice and then go further, like add on to it, saying, like this body is obviously not mine, not myself, then go add on to feeling and perception and go on to different aggregates, or is it not recommended to add on to this?
You can do that, but my apprehension would be that if you have like limited periods per day, and if you're doing that exclusively, you might be intellectualizing the practice too much or using too much thought. I think it's good to have as the basis a practice that involves settling down the thinking process by having a primary single point of focus, or what I call a body-based practice, or the contemplation of sensations in the body, so that the mind becomes more concentrated. Or even you could be using like Buddha Nusati, just choosing a single quality and focusing that to get the one-pointed concentration. But if you are using a concentrative practice as your primary object, then you can add on those meditation on the parts of the body, and then you can develop it, unfold it further the way you explained, moving from bodily form to the other aggregates.
I see. Thank you.
Okay, Punika.
Thank you, Bhante, for teaching the 4 protective meditations. I just wanted to mention the statements and the themes of the mindfulness of death are very simple, profound, deep, and true. And I really got a lot out of the practice of being in the dying state. I thought that was excellent. I thought that was excellent. I wasn't sad at all.
Don't be in a hurry.
I wanted to ask you regarding the Buddha's statement on mindfulness of death, culminating in the deathless, having the deathless as its consummation. Deathless, does that mean no death? Seeing dying, that it's not really death. It's just a continuum of the state of mind into the next life. Is that the right meaning, or can you explain that?
No, that's not the meaning. The meaning of the deathless is nibbana, the state of liberation from birth and death, so that when you attain nibbana, then there's no more birth and therefore no more aging and death.
Oh, okay. I see. So I'm not going to attain nibbana at the dying bed. This is attained when having really deeply understood and developed and cultivated this mindfulness of death. Is that correct? Seeing the state of nibbana.
Basically, the mindfulness of death, I would say, can motivate one. It creates in the mind what we call a sense of urgency, a sense of the need, the compelling need to practice and to develop the whole path. But to reach the deathless, to reach nibbana, one has to go, it's not enough just to do the mindfulness of death, but one has to develop sufficient samadhi and panya, concentration and insight wisdom.
Okay, I thought there was another meaning for deathless. Okay, so it is nibbana.
Yeah.
It is okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, Susie.
Hi, I am unmuted. Is that?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. I am so profoundly grateful. Also, I am attracted to the last part of the deathless, of the death meditation, of experiencing or imagining the experiencing of my own death.
Yeah.
One of my hopes in my life is that I will be wake for it, that I would be aware. And I had experienced on a retreat somewhere once that particular meditation done using the 4 elements and I wondered if the next time you do something like this, if you could incorporate the loss of the 4 elements. I mean, that whatever remains, I guess, is the earth element, but that we experience the loss of the temperature and the water and the drying out of the body and the air element. And I don't know if that is something that you would want to pursue, but I
don't recall anything about that in our Theravada tradition about the loss of the element. Maybe.
I do think it comes from the tradition where you found this. I think you said you found all of these in the Tibetan tradition. So
it's a text from a Tibetan library, the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, but it didn't. It didn't speak about the loss of the elements, and I'm not familiar with that.
I think it was a Zen retreat. I visited. I prefer the Theravadan tradition, but I go when something is available. Anyway, this was so my gratitude for all of this. If there's any value in that, and it is my assumption, and I would like you to say a little bit more. The idea of these protections is that when I find myself trapped in thought, I can turn to one of these as a skillful focus of my mind in order to discipline it away from all the papancha and the craziness that goes on when I find myself caught up.
Well, I would say that the principal way to deal with the papancha, or just the overwhelming proliferation of thoughts, would be a simple meditation like mindfulness of the breath, mindfulness of breathing, or a body-based awareness of sensations in the body. But these are protective meditations that each is an antidote to a particular fault or particular weakness. So the Buddha Nusati is a protective meditation because it helps to inspire faith and trust in the Buddha as the teacher. The loving kindness, because it's the antidote to ill will and hatred. The meditation on the parts of the body, because it's the antidote to sensual desire, particularly sexual lust, and also conceit based on the body. And the meditation on death is the antidote to negligence and laziness and heedlessness.
Thank you. Thank you for that reinforcement. Thank you so very much.
Okay, now I should take the questions that came earlier. Yvonne mentioned some from the internet.
Yes, Bante. So we have a total of 9 questions, 3 on Marananusati, 4 on 32 body parts, 2 on Metta Bhavana. And maybe Bante, may we proceed with the Marananusati?
Yeah.
Okay. So the 3 questions, first one is how to reduce attachment towards parents and to let go.
I think one of the ways to do this is to reflect again and again on the theme. In fact, there's one of the other themes that the Buddha mentions for daily reflection is this idea that I must be parted and separated from everyone who is dear and beloved to myself. And so if one does a regular reflection on that theme, then it will help to gradually reduce the attachment to parents. But of course, it's good to have a loving concern for one's parents, but one doesn't want to be always clinging to them. Okay, next.
And the second question, which contemplation helps to develop acceptance of death of our loved ones?
Again, I think it's that same topic that I just mentioned, the reflection on the theme, I must be parted and separated from everyone who is dear and agreeable to me. Because when you do that as a regular practice, it doesn't have to be done as a formal sitting meditation, but you can make it, if you have a regular sitting meditation practice, then maybe at the end of the session or sometime, if you're just sitting quietly, you could just turn over that thought that I must be parted and separated from everyone that I love. And then I can't say that it's going to remove grief entirely, but it helps to prepare the mind for the loss of loved ones. And I say, this is my view, that sometimes Buddhists think that when they lose a loved one, that they should be able to accept it with perfect indifference and equanimity without feeling any sorrow or grief. But what I say is that it's a healthy process to go through, to feel the grief and sorrow over the loss of a loved one. But when one has prepared the mind through regular reflection, and when one has developed mindfulness and the knowledge, the understanding of impermanence, then one could feel the grief and sorrow without letting it dig deep into the base of the mind. And so one experiences it, observes it mindfully, and recognizes that it takes time to overcome that grief and sorrow. And then it doesn't persist and overthrow the mind. Okay, next question.
Bande, maybe perhaps Bande just answered this next question. So next one is dealing directly with how to cope with grief. So which meditation practice would be the most effective? The mother had just passed away a month ago, so she was just trying to cope with grief.
What I would say is not so much a meditation practice, but what one can do to help counter the grief is to do good deeds, wholesome deeds, what we call meritorious deeds, and then like giving to some worthy charity, helping needy people, whatever. And then sharing the merits in one's mind. One invites the loved one who has passed away to, in a sense, observe or to acknowledge one's good deed, and then to rejoice in that good deed. And in this way, you have the conviction that one is helping one's loved ones who have passed away. You are helping them in their transition to the next existence, or in the next existence itself, if they're able to observe one's activities in this world.
Thank you, Bande. So Bande, next 4 questions are related to the 32 body parts. So in the practice of 32 body parts, many body parts or organs were not mentioned. So why are eyes, lips, private parts, or sexual organs not mentioned?
I don't know. This isn't intended to be a complete catalog of all the parts of the body. That's a job for professor of anatomy or physiology. This is just a list of the parts that's come down in the suttas and the Theravada tradition. I think in the counterparts from the Savastivada or some of the other schools, sometimes the list is longer, some lists are a little bit shorter. So it's just a selection of parts intended to convey the impression of the unattractive nature of the body. It's not intended to be an exhaustive list of every organ and type of tissue in the body.
Yes, Bande. And then, so how did Buddha select the 32 body parts? And perhaps they are in any way related to the 42 body parts in the Visuddhimagga.
Now, there's a misunderstanding here. The 32 parts are the parts which have come down in the text for the contemplation of the unattractive or impure nature of the body. But then there's another meditation subject, which is the 4 elements, and that includes the 32 parts. So we have the first 20 parts in that list of 32 represent the earth element. Then the other 12 parts in the 32 represent the water element or the liquid element. And then the text mentioned I think it's 4, I don't remember exactly the numbers, 4 modes of the fire element, 4 types of heat in the body. The power the power of digestion, the fever in the body. I don't remember all of them offhand. So those represent the fire element. And then there are 6 other bodily processes which are taken to represent the air element or the wind element. Yeah, so those are not different organs or tissues, but those additional 10 parts are processes, I think 4 representing the fire element and 6 representing the air element.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the next 2 questions are from the same meditator. So selected body part seems superficial and perhaps miss the approach of the whole package. Omission of parts in the whole package brought skepticism and doubt to the mind of the person raising this question.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. The 32 parts are selected because they have the specific reason. It's just a selection of parts intended to promote or to engender the perception of the unattractive nature of the body. It's not intended to be, I have to repeat myself, it's not intended to be a complete anatomical catalog of everything in the body.
And maybe in some way it advocates for castration. And
What?
that was the specific wording in the email. So maybe this advocates humane castration?
No, not at all. I mean, castration is not, it's even prohibited by the Buddha. It's prohibited for a monk to castrate himself.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay.
And the next 2 questions are related to the metta bhavana.
Yeah.
So how to cultivate happiness towards those who distresses us. The example given in the email is a coworker who is afraid of losing her job, therefore claims undue credits by others.
So the question is how to develop loving kindness towards that person?
Or a feeling of happiness as well.
I don't know, the only thing I could say is to develop maybe compassion towards that person because they're in an insecure position. And in a way, if they're taking credit from others, perhaps if the person who's asking the question is close to that person, they should take that person aside and say that they're doing something which is dishonest and harmful, eventually harmful to themselves and harmful to others, and that they should be aware of the dangerous consequences of that. I think that would be a genuine act of compassion towards that person.
Yes, Bande. So last question, how does one bring attention to actions that are hostile, cruel, or unfair, so to bring about fairness, justice, and amicable resolutions toward conflict?
I think I have to say this is too big a question to deal with. I'm already 8 minutes over time. And I dealt with that question to some extent. In fact, almost a whole class on our Anguttara Nikaya class dealt with that question. So if the person who asked the question goes to the website of the Buddhist Association, the YouTube channel of BAUS, the Buddhist Association of the United States, and Zhuangyan Monastery, and they look for the recording of the Dhamma class of what was last Saturday, 28th, November 21st. The sutta that I dealt with in that class, we deal to some extent with that question. Yeah, so we have to take questions that can be answered concisely. Okay, Does that take care of all the internet questions?
Ama Bande.
Okay, so next we take Deborah.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for this retreat. It was very helpful. During the meditation on the death, I tried to reduce the words in my head by visualizing I had death with a dagger or my body dissolving.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what do you recommend that we repeat a phrase, sort of like a mind chant, that we just you said reflect? Do we just hold the idea in our hand? Because even the visualizing is too much mind movement for me.
It's too much what?
Mind movement. It moves my mind.
Too much mind movement.
If I'm visualizing, I'm sort of creating a movie in my mind. Do you have a recommendation? Would we be repeating the arrival of death is absolutely uncertain, or just hold that idea?
I think in my experience, in the initial stage, one has to use a fair amount of mental verbalization in order to get familiar with the ideas, and even to explore it, to reflect on the themes in order to bring out the implications, the different aspects of each idea. But then once you become more familiar with the theme, then you can reduce the verbalization until you just can use the main headings, like that death is absolutely inevitable, the arrival of death is uncertain, unpredictable. When death comes, one must abandon everything. And so it just becomes enough to use those main headings and then to pick up the feelings that come from those main headings.
Yes, I see. Thank you. Thank you.
In the early stages, it's good to use a fair amount of verbalization, of mental verbalization, in order to get familiar with the topic.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, S. Vijay Ratna.
Thank you very much for this retreat, Bhante. We are very grateful to you. One of the questions that I have is, would one of the big benefits of the death
I'm getting a lot of static.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Right. Would one of the benefits of the death and dying meditation would be that one would be able to pass away very peacefully, so that the last thought will be hopefully a good one? Would that be the case among many?
Yes. Yes, definitely. Definitely. In fact, that is like one of the main benefits of this meditation. Since one is, so doing this meditation, one has undergone one's death in advance, maybe many times. Mm-hmm. And so it's sort of like rehearsing for a play. Like if you're in a play and then you do the rehearsal over and over. And then when when the opening night comes and you go out on the stage, then you can play your part and recite your lines perfectly. But if you're assigned a part in a play and then you don't do any rehearsal, you just go out with your friends and enjoy yourself, then opening night comes and then your turn comes, you go out on stage and you haven't done the rehearsal, then you go out and you're terrified. The audience is looking at you, fellow actors are looking at you, wondering, what is he going to say? And I'm terrified, I'm petrified. Yeah, so this is, in a way, it's rehearsing for the inevitable.
I guess one is better prepared for their departure. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, that is the point. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bhante. Appreciate it.
Okay. So that takes care of all of the questions, I think. Okay, so now we're going to wind up and conclude the retreat with the sharing of the merits. But first, I want to mention some people who should receive a round of applause, several rounds of applause. I had the paper. Now I can't find it. No, it's not that. Okay, so I just have to rely on memory. Like while this retreat has been going on, there have been, well, it took a lot of work on the behalf of a number of people to prepare for this retreat and to do the background work. So first I have to mention the people who have been the sort of organizers and coordinators for the technical side of the retreat. Stephen Seward, together with Kaidi Shu, they have been the coordinators. So let us give them a round of applause. And then throughout the retreat, we've had a number of people who have been working as hosts and co-hosts, handling the electronic side. So let's see if I get everybody. Ivan Tsang and Vaishali Gaidani, who are in California. Jane Du in Pennsylvania. Yorong Avis in Upper New York State. And Osman Boyk in Connecticut. Did I get it? All of the tech assistants?
Bhante, also Jason.
Yeah, I'm going to mention Jason. Of course, I'm going to mention Jason. I didn't forget him, but first I'm just mentioning the background, the hidden tech hosts and co-hosts. Yeah, and then right here at Zhuangyan Monastery, the person who's been handling all of the technical aspects, as always, as well as the videography and recording, is Jason Ye, who always does an excellent job. So round of applause for Jason. And then we've had help from our resident monastics, Venerable Mangala, Venerable Hongjun, Venerable Desho, and Venerable Jishu. And did I cover everybody? Okay, so let us now do the final sharing of the merits. And so over the past, one more issue before we do the sharing of the merits. Do you think we should have another 4 protective meditation retreat in the spring? How does that sound?
Yes, please, Bhante.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe I would really like to do it 4 days so that we have 1 day for each meditation subject. But it's hard to get 4 successive days. So what I came up with is March 25, 26, but that's a Thursday and a Friday. And then 27, 28, that's a Saturday, Sunday. But we could think about it. We don't have to fix the date now. Okay, so let us now do the sharing of the merits. And so over the past 3 days, we've been discussing and explaining the Dhamma and then meditating very intensively on these very powerful meditation subjects. And we've been doing our daily chanting morning and evening, and then discussing the Dhamma through our question and answer sessions. So all of these are considered roots or bases of merit. And so we want to share this merit with First, we will share it with our departed relatives and other loved ones. And then we share the merits with the Dharma protecting deities, the Devas, and with the Nagas, the dragon spirits, and the Bhutas, the fierce spirits that forcefully protect the Dhamma in the world. And so I'm going to recite the verses for sharing the merits. And you, while I'm reciting, you develop the mind of loving kindness and spread the rays, the light rays of those merits over the world. And you could think of any departed loved ones, if you wish, inviting them in your heart to rejoice in the merits. Akasata cha bhumata devanaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanam. Akasata cha bhumata devanaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanam. Akasata cha bhumata devanaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mang parang. Etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe sata anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Pavagupadaya avici hetato etantare satakayupapanna rupya rupicha sanya sanino dukkha pumuchantu pusantu nibuting. And then you say sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, and then we will all rise, and then we'll end with 3 half bows to the Buddha. Okay, so thank you everybody who participated on this retreat. And it was your
Thank you. Thank you, Bante.
Thank
Thank you, Bante.
so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Bante.
Very good.
Thank you,
Bante.
Thanks a lot for the wonderful retreat.
Very excellent.
Thank you, Bante.
So much, Bante.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In there, man.
Thank you, Bante.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everyone.
Thank you, Bante. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good health. Good health.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We all love
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Bante. Thank you, Bante. Karuna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bana.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Bante.
Thank you,
Thank you
Bante.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you,
Okay.
Bante.
Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you, Bante. Thank you, Bante.
Okay.
Thank you.
So nice to see you.
Okay. I'm going to have to sign off now.
Thank you. Okay, bye, Bante.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Blessings.
Dear Bante, good night, everyone.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you very much, Bhante.